I'm here with Natter, and he's just been announced as a content creator for the Rain. Of course, like given your content with an educational bend, so to speak, right? Like,
Yeah.
how does that come together? Like, how did they hit you up, and like, how did that happen?
So I'll be honest. I actually hit up Seppi because I've talked to Seppi a lot when I was in contenders and coaching, and we've talked a lot about strategies and macro stuff. And uh, I'm not gonna go too much into it right now because I'm sure we'll talk about it later. But I was really curious about working with an owl team in terms of content because with Overwatch 2 coming out, I think educational content will just generally be very big because people are going to want to learn how to play the game. So I was talking to actually quite a few owl teams, and a lot of them were interested. But I think Rain, was definitely the team. It made the most sense to go with. So
Right. Now, for those that might not be too aware of your history, how would you sort of describe like what your general direction was, and like what you've done over the last, let's say, 3 or 4 years in Overwatch?
yeah, sure. So I mean, generally from gaming, also starting really early. I came from RTS. I came from Age of Empires. Moving into Overwatch. Overwatch is my first FPS game. So I started as a player. I wasn't very good. I was a main support, flex support. Known for my shot calling IGL, my strategy essentially. I peaked at like 3.75 ish. I scrimmed at a little bit higher SR just because I was able to. When my team was carrying me mechanically. Eventually, I realized, playing's probably not for me. Let me try coaching. So I moved into coaching. I started literally in gold, like coaching gold teams, and I eventually moved up all the way to tier 3, in NA. Eventually, I got an offer to coach in an SA contenders team, and I was like, you know what, sure. So I coached in a SA. Definitely interesting experience. I learned a lot there. They have a lot of hardships, especially, I know the region doesn't exist anymore, but they had a lot of hardships with internet issues and stuff like that. But then after that, I got an offer in the EU. So I went to EU, to Europe, and I coached a contenders team there. We have org. Unfortunately, we dropped to contenders trials. And then they rebranded to out of my game. Then after that, I got an offer to pack contenders, with global esports. And here, it went really well. I got second on the second season I was with them. The first season I was with them, we would have done better, but unfortunately, again, internet issue, and we had to play a contenders match 5v6. So, that happened.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, then I, decided to come back to NA, and I got a really big break, I'd say. I trialed actually for Revival. And Cynic, who was the coach at the time, he unfortunately retired, from Overwatch. But he gave me a shot. He trialed and he liked me and he picked me up. At the same time, I was also trialing for Third Impact, under by Zenith, who was the head coach. And I told Cynic, I'm interested, but I also want to trial for Third Impact. So I trialed with, Third Impact, ended up going Third Impact, and then that's where sort of stuff really got set up for me. Like we worked really really hard. Zenith, who obviously went to Shock, San Francisco Shock. He did an amazing job. I also worked with Sword, and Get Amazed, who was at Paris. So we had a really great coaching staff. We worked insanely hard. We dominated, I would say, contenders. That season. We were we were right up there with Second Wind and Envy most of the time, just fighting for first, and Second Wind got picked up. So that's sort of where I sort of like finished my like official coaching. Um, and yeah, after that I sort of like went sort of unofficial, and I've been doing some other stuff on the side. We'll sure go into that, but yeah,
For
it's a little
sure.
background on me.
You also have done a bunch of like community events that you've organized, right?
Yes,
You
yes. So oh, go ahead.
no
Sorry.
no, no, go ahead. Yeah.
But yeah, no. So when I was at Third Impact, we actually did a tier 3, tier 2 tournament. It was, and that went really well. I think I had like a 4.5k prize pool, qualifier, with tier 3, and then it seeded into tier 2. And then just recently, I actually just did a community bash tournament series. I really wanted to give more or shed more light to the other tiers in Overwatch. I wanted to do, I even wanted to do gold, but unfortunately we didn't have the time. So and plat, we just didn't have the time. So we ended up doing diamond, masters, grandmasters, and then tier 3. And the idea was just essentially just one tournament for every tier, and just have a cash prize and good casting, good content, and have some good competition. And it's not like this hasn't been done before. There are amazing leagues out there, BPL, UGC, and Tranquility, just to name a few. But I just really wanted to do one too, and so that's one thing I did, and I'm definitely there's a few more stuff planned in the future, but I really do want to help and support the community because the community is honestly amazing.
Can you talk about this? Because like theoretically speaking, I think there's not too many that like at the same time like cared about professional play and like contender stuff, and of course trying to get into Overwatch League, but also like looking at the average player, honestly, like the everyday man trying to learn some Overwatch, like so you're trying to sort of like be the gateway into the pro experience. So why was that something that tickled your fancy?
I mean, I think especially for me, right? Because I came from a background where Overwatch is like a first FPS, so I wasn't used to this. I didn't come from TF2 or anything like that, so I totally understand players who came from maybe like again not a professional background or just want to improve. So it's always something that's always been passionate about, or I'm passionate about, is just trying to like elevate someone's player, just help them understand the game at a higher level. So it doesn't matter what your rank is. I think I've heard people say, "Oh, I won't coach you. You're lower SR." No, like doesn't matter what SR. You can always improve. You can always get better. Even I can always get better. Everyone's always improving, right? So I think that's just important.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like this skill set has helped you in like developing outside the game in a way?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd say so. I recently graduated college, computer science degree, and I'm currently in LA actually as a cybersecurity analyst. And I think a lot of my job actually is working with clients. We have a few Fortune 500 clients. And I have to like communicate well and make sure I do good presentations. So when I do VOD reviews as a coach, like how to present, make sure people understand things correctly. That definitely actually like plays a massive effect. And that's actually one of the reasons why I'm a little bit more customer facing sometimes now than some of my coworkers, because I could just communicate better and and it did, yeah, it really made a big impact. I think something else that a lot of people don't really think about is when you're in a coaching environment, or even a team environment, there's so much teamwork as well as communication that has to happen that is like directly like related to stuff that happens in real life, right? Like when you're on a team in a business world or like a project, like it's a team environment. You got to communicate. You got to deal with stuff. I think and especially with Third Impact, we had so many issues that just would happen. And we lost Zeke to Toronto literally like 3 or 4 days before our contender season. And it was just like, well, who are we gonna get? And we ended up picking up Razor. And it was like my job to do one-on-ones with him and make sure he could get up to the task, and he did a great job. We did really well then. But just like in a job, right? Like you might have some curveball thrown at you. Hey, we need this done tomorrow, or oh man, this person's sick, so now you got to do it, right? So there's a lot of similarities, and I think not a lot of people talk about that.
For sure. I think like part of being a coach is always not just like helping people improve at the game, but sort of like how do you feel this more? Like, do you think the average player has also something to be learned about, like for instance, patience and how that translates into a game? Do you feel like there's certain like emotions or like thought patterns that the average player has yet to overcome? Do you think there's anything that you regularly encounter that people could improve on?
I mean, I think comp always, sets people off. I mean, competitive it can be quite a handful sometimes, but yeah, I mean, I think patience. A lot of people just want to climb the top instantly, and there is, I mean, everyone like people know there's no short. Like you don't get to anywhere just like this, right? It takes time. It's a lot of hard work. And I think like you said, patience is you have it. It takes time. So I think some people just want results right away, and unfortunately, that just doesn't happen. Maybe like 1% of people that happens, or 2%, but the general person, you put a lot of effort in. I know people who probably play about 7-8 hours of comp a day, daily stuff they do. So, there's definitely a lot of hard work put in.
For sure.
And habits, I'd also add. Oh, sorry.
No worries. Now let's get a little bit into like the stuff that has been announced and like how this is going to go, right? And I think like immediately, yeah, there were some obstacles thrown in your way, because like The I think it was even the official Overwatch account that confirmed like we're not going to have a replay viewer for now, right? And knowing like what usually coaching is, and like also helping people and whatnot, this is a huge tool. So how are you how are you going to like deal with that situation, and like what's the workaround?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely going to be a bit more tricky, I'd say. I mean, I also just remember generally before the replay viewer existed, I would just normally just use a person's POV and just manage off that, right? Um, but what I'd say is it's still manageable, looking at a POV or like, third person or whatnot, or sky view, um, and sort of understanding what's going on. Um, I think it'll be a bit more tricky as you won't be able to see all the intricacies that are normally happening, maybe ability wise or positioning wise, and reaction based stuff. But I think it'll take a little bit more time and a little bit more analysis, but I think the end result should still be the same. And I think that's what you've seen like in general, right? Like before and back in days, people were still learning, people were still improving. It just probably it took a little bit more time. So I think it should be fine, and I don't think it really should be an issue. I do hope that we do get replay, we do get it back because I think it is very useful and I do like it. So yeah, fingers crossed. But in terms of like what I plan on doing, I think a lot of it will be able to be made in a way which people should still be able to understand it um without a replay viewer. I think like even the certain content I do right now on my own Twitch and YouTube, I'm not depending on replay viewer too much. I can just sort of have brief examples sort of set up and sort of again third person like sort of looking down type of aspect, and it normally is okay. So we'll have to see though.
Right. Do you have an idea like how much of it will be split between like the different types of content, like coaching one-on-ones, or like looking at, I don't know, professional play and trying to learn from that? Because obviously with Overwatch 2 coming in, like these guys have had their hands on that firsthand. If I'm a new player coming in, like these guys have figured it out by now, are already improving at a greater rate. So there's presumably great utility learning from Overwatch League from the get-go, right?
Yeah. So definitely the idea is, a lot of the content like I'm looking to do with, Atlanta is going to be very Overwatch 2 focused. It's going to be very I'm going to do a lot of macro because that's something that I love, like team-based stuff, but I'm also going to make sure there is micro because a lot of people may not play in a competitive environment and just want to learn, how does Kai hit literally a bajillion headshots because he's insane. Or how is Venom so good at Tracer? Or whatnot. So I want to definitely focus on those points because I think it is important, and I think not a lot of people still understand that. So going more in depth and detailed with those, like micro based things, I think will be useful. But I think also going into some of the down and dirty, like strategies. I think one of the biggest ones that everyone remembers is the Gladiator's Great Bamboozle, right? There are so many of those, right? And it's awesome like watching it, but no one ever talks about it. Like nobody ever talks about it, and you only like think of that one, maybe like a few others. So there's a lot of stuff like that I want to talk about and I want to go into, and I think it'll be really interesting.
What do you think we miss those plays? Because okay, the Great Bamboozle is kind of weird in how the gameplay evolves, right? Like you're used to like the action taking place, they're somehow doing something else. Honestly, like in that play, the observers already also caught it. I think otherwise the general viewer would have also had a problem. Like, what do you think? Yeah. How do we make it so we get to see those plays? Apparently, much more often the case. How do we get those to be perceived by the viewer?
So I think it's really difficult. To be honest, like a lot of them are like bait plays. Like for example, there's a Sombra hiding somewhere, and then someone jumps on somebody. The Sombra's already set up, and it happens so fast. Some of these plays that it's very hard for like observers or anyone to really notice what's going on. It has to be done after the fact, right? So, and there's other stuff too, like I call them rotation baits, where they look like you're going one way, but then they go the other way. Like there's stuff like that. Like I have something I call shock rotations, where shock does these type of rotations that literally it's really them, and it's like a style they do that is really unique. Again, not many people talk about it, but it's definitely like a play style, and it's very interesting to see. So it just happens so fast that again, it's really hard to talk about it.
Right.
In real time.
Okay, now I'm interested. What is a shock rotation?
Alright, so this is my name for it. So I'm sure other people call it different things, but it's where essentially you normally it's a little hard to explain, but
Right.
let's say we're on Oasis, the jump pad map,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going left side with the left side mega.
Mm-hmm.
Most people in Brawl Mirror would go to the left side mega,
Mm-hmm.
right? They would meet on the left side mega, but what Shock would do is they would actually go the opposite side, and then they would push the enemy team and get right on their back line.
Mm.
So they would basically make these very fast-paced rotations in the opposite way a team would normally be expecting, based off what a person normally thinks.
Mm-hmm.
And these can happen in like a lot of situations. Kings Row, hotel, you can make it think like you're going through hotel, but maybe you don't go through hotel, and stuff like that. So this is sort of what I call it. I'm sure a lot of teams do this. I think is I scrimped Shock so much when I was in Third Impact. So this is something, and we were both really big Brawl teams. Like Third Impact was like a really big Brawl team. So this is sort of what we called it. But yeah.
Are they hard to read and therefore are they effective because of that?
Yes, it's hard to read and just insanely fast, right? Like
Mhm.
it's all about reaction time in the end, right? And like you can't scout something that happens like literally like in 1 second, and the enemy's already in your face.
Mm.
Like there's like a distance like variable, right? And if the distance is very small and like the action is so fast, your reaction is like you just can't do much about it, right?
Yeah.
So that's what makes Overwatch very interesting, and that's why even you see some certain teams, right? They'll still play Brawl and they'll get a lot of value out of it. It's because of like this concept that you can be really fast and it's hard for people to react properly.
And presumably, like through the new game, like some of those like macro strategies will evolve as well. Now, as we said, like the pro players are probably going to have like a jump on the strategy. Of course, they're far ahead. They're also very good at like improving at rapid rates. Will you have access to some of the Atlanta players, and like you'll be able to like pick their brains maybe over the season?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Don't want to get too much into again what we have planned and whatnot, but yeah, we'll see. There's definitely a lot of good content I think we'll have based off that type of stuff,
Mhm.
as well as I also don't want to disclose like there are strategies that are like obvious, and there's also strategies that are like this is like really crucial and like it's like in depth, and we don't want to disclose that type of stuff. So I think that there'll be a line, right, that you need to make sure that is like good, like we're not passing that line, or I'm not passing that line. So that's something that I'll watch a bit more or care, and we'll definitely see some, I think, good content around that, hopefully.
For sure. Now, having been someone that tries to schedule interviews with players, I know they are a hassle to them, and
Yeah.
it's harder to get them. Even though I will say, probably your type of content appeals to them more. I think they generally like explaining the concept. Honestly, like as a teacher, it also helps sort of like understand if you can explain it. So I think they should be less reserved
Yeah.
about doing your content.
I think also one thing to add too, right, is like I think if I come from like a different perspective where I already understand what's going on and just ask, hey, like just a quick check, right, then it's even faster for them and they don't have to spend a lot of time. That's something else I think makes it easier, right? So it's easier for them, right? If I would say, hey, like I've noticed this, like, yeah, sounds good. They're like, yeah, good. Okay, cool, done. Right? And then I can just work on the content. And then if they need to talk, then maybe they talk or something.
For sure. Now, are there other tools? We talked about the replay viewer. Of course, this is a work in progress. Are there other tools that would make your job easier, or indeed would make the general player be able to improve at a faster rate? Maybe increase transparency, or like give better performance indicators, or give better ideas like how they can improve. Is there anything that comes to mind?
I mean, there's a tool I'm currently working with. I'm not trying to like shout it out, but I do think like they're making good progress, and I think they have some really great like stats so far. It's called Champria, uh, and they have some great dashboards right now, and they're working on more like higher level stuff too. And it's just really nice to be able to actually see a competitive like graph of sort of like where you're going in comp, up and down, see your damage for 10, and stuff like that. So that to me is actually really useful. I know a lot of teams, and look at stats, right? As like player stats to see like how they're faring. Even players themselves, they'll like in top 500 or even top 100, honestly now, like they'll just like, oh man, this person's got like 2k damage more than me, hero damage. Oh, this person's done this much more healing, and sort of compare it. So sort of having something that's able to sort of track your competitive stats over a period of time, I think it's gonna be really useful. So this tool, Champria, I think I think it's gonna be really helpful, I think, in my opinion. So I'm looking forward to sort of see more what they do with it and whatnot.
Right. From your point of view, right? Like just like sort of thinking about what the new game could feel like, right? Not having seen anything, like the complexity of Overwatch can be overwhelming, right? Like 66 as a game, generally speaking, is already like a little larger than other FPS, for instance. Generally used. Now we're going down to a sort of level there, right? Do you think this will help the average player to just like parse through the action, not just in playing, but also maybe in watching?
So I think people who are new to the game, they might enjoy it because it's like easier for them to like visually understand what's going on because there's less people. And people who are watching who again like just again new, yeah, it'll probably be very helpful for them too because less people, so it's easier to see what's going on. But I think people who are playing the game, it's gonna feel really weird, right? Because like losing a tank just means you like tanks hold space, right? At a very general level. And all of a sudden just losing one means you sort of like lose the fact of like you're holding so much space. So that I think is it's gonna feel really weird for a lot of players to feel like they don't have that security anymore and they have to play it very differently. And I think some players will like it maybe. I think some players will just absolutely dislike it. And that's I think literally going to be the biggest problem, right? Obviously going from 6v6 to 5v5. I do think maybe after a set duration of time, people will get used to it. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But I do think in the overlook of terms of like people watching and in terms of new people coming in, it might be easier. And in terms of watching, I think it also depends on the compositions that end up being played. If the compositions, aren't very fun to watch, then that's another story. But I am hoping that the compositions will be good and it'll be interesting and fun to watch.
Right. What was your initial reaction when you heard that, like, we're going to get rid of the one of the tanks?
I was like, why? Why are we doing this? This does not make any sense. This is not the problem with the game, but okay. That was my initial reaction. Again, I understand why they're doing it. It makes sense why they're doing it. I personally don't think it's what was really needed. Um, but you know, it is what it is, right? Like you can't do much about it. But I'm curious to see how it develops. I think from what my understanding, the dev team and what they've announced publicly, they're a lot faster with these updates, at least on the alpha, right? I've heard that they're making like faster patches and whatnot. So I'm hoping that this speed in which they're patching and doing updates will actually also correspond to when stuff is actually public, whether it's the open beta or just when the full game is released. Just constantly having these fast-paced updates, because when you have the game just feels so much better, right? It just feels like very fresh, very new. So that's what I'm hoping. That yes, this may still be a 5v5, but hopefully if we keep having these like fast updates based off like again like professional players' opinions, um, and even content creators and stuff like that, and getting more input and using that, then I think that'd be great.
Right. Now, I guess as a last question, like, what can viewers now expect coming from you in the next foreseeable future? Like, what have you planned? Can you give us a little bit of peek behind the curtain? What is going on?
So I mean, a lot of obviously Owl content creators, right, are doing Owl co-streams. I'm not sure exactly how that's gonna work with the new season, but I'm obviously looking to do that if possible. There's definitely going to be a lot of YouTube videos, so definitely check out Atlanta's Reign YouTube. If you're part of the Atlanta Reign community too, I suggest joining their Discord. We're gonna have some events as well. I'm gonna say I got some ideas of some events that I really want to do that are education focused, as well as honestly we could just do some other fun. I have some other fun ideas too. Um, and there's some other things that I don't want to discuss and go into yet, but hopefully it'll be a good surprise. So There's just some like again normal stuff, but you know, I some of the surprise stuff I think will be hopefully new and fun and creative. So we'll see.
Awesome. Then we thank you for the interview and best of luck in what you're doing in the future.
Thank you.